tumble. Keep an eye on the spring and run when church bells ring. It could happen to you. All that I did was wonder how your arms would be, and it happened to me. Your heart from sight and lock those dreams at night. It could happen to you. Don't count stars or you might stumble. Oh, someone drops a sigh and down you tumble. Keep an eye positive and eliminate the negative and latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. You better spread joy up to the maximum and bring gloom down to the minimum and have faith. The pandemonium is liable to walk up on the sea. To illustrate my last remark, Jonah and the whale, Noah and the ark. What did they do just when everything looked so dark? Man, they said we better accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative and latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. The positive, eliminate the negative, and latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. You better spread joy up to the maximum and bring gloom down to the minimum and have faith, or pandemonium is liable to walk upon the sea. To illustrate my last remark, Jonah and the whale, Noah and the ark. What did they do when everything looked so dark? Man, they said you better accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and latch on to the affirmative. Don't mess with Mr. In Between. No, don't mess with Mr. In Between. Don't mess with Mr. In Between.
Please join with the call to worship this morning. Oh, it's just me. Oh, all right. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Burst into jubilant song with music. Make music to the Lord with the sound of singing. Let the sea resound and everything in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. For God comes to judge the earth in righteousness and to bring equity to the peoples. Please stand as, oh, not yet. We're doing our opening hymn first? Are we doing the opening hymn right now? Oh, okay. Please stand for the opening hymn. seated. Welcome, everyone. This is a special day, a special week, and a special month, because today is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of you fathers. And I wish you, as you remember your own father, or think of your own father today, to remember all the best. All the best. This week is Juneteenth on Wednesday the 19th, and I think it's very important for us to remember that and to celebrate that we're all people, no matter what color we are, and we all have the same rights. And it's Pride Month. I'm dressed for that. I thought we should all be aware of all those things. And you might notice that the bulletin says it's the 9th, but it's really the 16th today. Honest. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter where you are on life's journey, you're most welcome here at First Congregational Church. I have a couple of announcements this morning. The Eve's Circle is meeting this coming Saturday from 10 to 12. They will be collecting flip-flops to distribute to migrants at the Arizona border, and also collecting flowers and vases to make bouquets for our sanctuary altar. Everyone is always welcome to Eve's Circle. We'll be welcoming new members next Sunday. If you've been thinking about joining us in membership, please contact Pastor Derek, and you'll see his, it's not there, but he is at derek.austin@uccportland.org, and you can contact him that way, if not in person, to set it. It's 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's my mistake.
Okay, it's 2 weeks from today. All right. So you have 2 weeks to plan if you want to join us. We'd love to have you. And please plan to join us for fellowship hour after the service today. Coffee and refreshments will be awaiting you. And for our live streaming participants, whichever camera is on at the moment, please join us in the Zoom fellowship hour immediately following services, the link for which is on the live stream page. Now please stand and share the peace of God with one another.
As you're beginning to take your seats, I will invite you, if you think you're going to participate in our discussion time later, please make your way to the center section. We're going to be using a mic on the floor rather than moving all around, which eats up a lot of time. So feel free to make that adjustment as you see fit. My mic sounds very weird right now. I'm not sure why. And I don't think it's my stubble. Well, we always have to adjust for that. Should I move it? Down? Up? Sound fine to you? Okay. All right. Not to the speakers. We just have a little feedback. I stop only because we're going into our time of prayer, and feedback is horribly distracting when you're trying to pray. So I think for both of us. What's that? Or divine. Or divine? Well, sure, okay. I think Chris will land on that for quite some time. Anne was right. This was quite a week. We started our series last Sunday talking about AI, artificial intelligence. And who weighed in on that, on the aspects of faith and artificial intelligence and the ethics? Who weighed in on that this week? Do you know? You should be watching the news. The Pope was invited to the G7 summit specifically to express his concerns around the ethics of AI as they intersect with faith and the human experience. I just thought that was quite serendipitous.
He's probably online, right?
He's probably online. He's a bright man. Well, let's take a moment and center our hearts and thoughts as we go to God in prayer. Holy One, the one that Peter said, in whom we live and move and have our very being. How forward-thinking that term was for his day, where you live and swirl around us and among us and in us, between us and through us, and we with you. There is both a comfort there and a challenge to live into the better parts of ourselves and to find you in the small and big moments of our day and our week. We are grateful for all of the intersections of our time where we both are aware of you and how you provide for us and protect us, and for the moments that we are unaware. Thank you that you have such a space in your heart to want to and to be able to look out for what is in our best interest. Whether we can see that and agree with it or not, you hold us in the palm of your hand, and we are so grateful for that. God, we think of those in our community struggling with various different aspects of life, whether because of the consequences of their own actions or things completely unrelated to them, but in which they have found themselves wanting for various things, for housing, for employment, for sufficient finances, for food, for a sense of community and belonging, for someone to acknowledge they exist. For a way to find the end of their struggle. For those both within this room and without, in this city and in this community, we pray that there would be an awareness of your availability to them, of your love and your compassion and your desire to engage them. And as we often pray, for those moments in which we can be the answer to that very prayer, enlighten us. Prick our hearts and our consciences in those moments. Give us insight into how to be you for those that we encounter. We join the millions and millions across this globe praying for peace in various parts of the world and for those that are suffering from the fallout and the catastrophes of war. Be for them their fortress. Somehow bring peace to those regions. End these conflicts, which have gone so far beyond the ability to justify them. And now we take a moment, mindful of those in our own lives who have needs that we carry a burden for. We take a moment and lift those names and situations to you now. God, with our hearts joined as one, we thank you so much that you not only love us, but you are able to care for us beyond our own ability to care for ourselves. Amen.
The first reading this morning comes as excerpts of the 25th chapter of the book of Leviticus. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. Do not sow or reap what grows of itself, or harvest the unintended vines. For it is a jubilee, and it is to be holy for you. And in this year of jubilee, everyone is to return to their own land. If you sell land to any of your own people, or buy land from them, do not take advantage of each other. You are to buy from your own people, or to sell to your own people, on the basis of the number of years left for harvesting crops. When the years are many, you are to increase the price. And when the years are few, you are to decrease the price, because that is what is really being sold to you is the number of crops. Do not take advantage of each other, but fear your God. The land must not be sold permanently because the land is mine, and you reside in my land as foreigners and strangers. Throughout the land that you hold as a possession, you must provide for redemption of that land. If one of your fellow Israelites becomes poor and sells some of their property, their nearest relative is to come and redeem what they have sold, so they can then go back to their own land. But if they do not acquire the means to repay, what is sold will remain in the possession of the buyer until the year of Jubilee. It will then be returned in the Jubilee, and they can then go back to their property. But the houses and villages without walls around them are to be considered as belonging to the open country. And they can be redeemed, and they are to be returned in the Jubilee. If any of your fellow Israelites becomes poor or unable to support themselves among you, help them as you would a foreigner or a stranger, so they can continue to live among you. Do not take interest or profit from them, any profit, but fear your God, so that they may continue to live among you. If any of your fellow Israelites become poor and wish to sell themselves to you, do not make them work as slaves. They are to be treated as hired workers or temporary residents among you. They are to work for you until the year of the Jubilee. And they and their children are to be released, and they will go back to their own clans and to the property of their ancestors. Our second reading comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 10. Be on your guard. I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as serpents and as innocent as doves. And finally, a reflection by the author and theologian Richard Rohr. Most Christian believers tend to echo the cultural prejudices and worldviews of the dominant group of their country, with only a minority revealing any real transformation of attitudes or consciousness. It has been true of slavery and racism, classism and consumerism, and now in the issues of immigration and health care for the poor. Here ends our readings for the morning.
So as most of you are aware, we're engaging our first summer series this month by exploring how faith intersects with the latest news items and national or international issues, and how it either informs or is informed by them. Then, in digging further, we look at how faith either should impact and speak into or is impacted by the news items of the day. Today, we are looking at immigration and the border, as it has dominated much of the national conversation for months, and arguably for years or decades to a greater or lesser extent. If you've been following the national news at all this past couple weeks, you know that President Biden enacted an executive order 2 weeks ago that essentially closed our southern border to the vast majority of migrants and asylum seekers, offering little or no exceptions to that order. And while we are not using this series as a platform for political harangue, it's fair to mention that both major political parties argued that this move was quite, in their words, Trumpian in both its ideology and its execution. This past Monday, the White House announced an additional policy stand extending exemptions to the closed border to undocumented residents who are spouses of U.S. citizens. Whether this was a genuine gesture of compassion after rethinking the previous week's new policy, or a political move to increase the Latino vote in the upcoming election, we will leave that to the political pundits and analysts to debate, and will not entertain that question here in this forum. What we will discuss is how faith should, does, or fails to impact the issue of migrants attempting to enter the U.S., legally or illegally, and there are religious postures to support both of those endeavors. So thinking the legal question solves it is just being naive. And what our response might be to the answer to that question. So politics aside, though they dominate the issue and tend to encroach on the voices trying to represent the various faith positions, ours, as well as several other faiths, have a significant amount to say about how to treat, deal with, and interact with immigrants. In the Judeo-Christian faiths, many of those thoughts come from the Old Testament, which I think might be surprising to some, given its reputation in progressive circles to be the meaner of the two parts of the Bible, with the New Testament being the kinder one. The lengthy reading that we just heard moments ago from the book of Leviticus, I applaud you for staying awake during it, is but one of many remarks in those first 5 books about how the new nation of Israel was to treat the stranger or the sojourner, a term which God tended to use in the holy text for our modern word, immigrant or migrant. So let's look at this concept first through both the conservative and progressive religious lenses, and then we'll move on from there. The conservative faith position is primarily motivated, religiously anyway, by the notion of proselytization. Evangelicals, who make up the vast majority of those who identify as conservative Christians, would pose the notion that the suffering experienced by those attempting to migrate into the U.S., or anywhere else for that matter, is a short-lived concern, in contrast with the need to convert and save their souls from an eternity in hell. Thus, talking about migrant suffering at the border and pain that they are enduring, for them, evangelicals, is essentially a non sequitur. Progressives, on the other hand, tend to take and then tout positions on any particular social issue by first approaching it from the standpoint of compassion and empathy. And I applaud them for that. Our church and our denomination certainly belong to that camp. But they also tend to stop there, neglecting to extend or continue their analysis by dissecting the relevant social as well as financial costs to enacting those positions. And there, as Hamlet would say, is the rub. I'm going to preface my next thought with a caveat that it will initially sound quite unrelated, so please try and stay with me for a minute. There is an old sundry law, again in the Old Testament, this one in the book of Exodus, and then it's repeated in the book of Deuteronomy, that says, don't boil a calf in its mother's milk. This was subsequently, in both my opinion and that of many Reformed Jewish rabbis, misconstrued by Jewish leaders and teaching as the requirement to always separate meat from dairy as a kosher restriction. It has evolved over the centuries and the millennia as perhaps the most critical food restriction in kosher life, with entire personal as well as commercial kitchens being designed to accommodate that restriction. But that is not what that law was talking about at all. It wasn't about food or diet or something being unclean, not even in the very wording itself. It was about honoring and respecting the calf's mother. Don't force her to participate in her child's death, it was basically saying. That can be construed as compassion as well, upholding the dignity of the animal. So where am I going with that? Well, I think in a similar way, suggesting that applying the idea that we are a nation born and bred from immigrants automatically requires us to give unfettered access to uncontrolled numbers of people coming from unknown and uninvestigated regions of the globe, that is a similar exaggeration of that position. Yet it is one posited by those on the extreme progressive side of the topic of immigration. Like Jesus said in Matthew, which we heard quoted a moment ago, be as gentle as doves, be compassionate as you are able to be. But in so doing, be as wise as serpents. Be cunning when you're doing it. Don't extend kindness from an uninformed and purely idealistic mindset. That won't serve anyone's best interests, including those that are being served by it. Now, all that being said, the passages that I didn't have read this morning for the sake of time, numerous ones peppering the Old Testament, continually admonish the Israelites to make space for the stranger. They were to treat them with kindness and offer them assistance, to expect their presence and make allowances for it, and to do all of those things because of one simple reason. You were strangers too, God said. And I also took care of you. You were sojourners in this my land, and you will take care of them as I did you. Jesus used the same term when describing whom we are to extend compassion to, the stranger. But countering that, both the Old and New Testaments charge the people of God to be wary of showing too much compassion if they aren't assessing the potential damage that such gestures might cause to the giver. What do I mean by that? Well, very small book of Jude in the New Testament, he said as much in his one-chapter letter when he said, "These people slander what they don't understand, and the very things they do understand by instinct will eventually destroy them." Now, the context here was referring to outsiders coming in from other pagan faiths, pretending to be Christians and upsetting the worship and teaching practices of the church. But the point is similar enough that it warrants heeding. The desire to show kindness and make space for someone should not supersede your obligation to uphold the integrity of your beliefs or to do an end run around wise and common sense behavior. Jude then went on with the same point, but from a different angle, when he said, "In the last times there will be scoffers who will follow their own ungodly desires, and these are the people who will divide you, who follow mere natural instincts and do not have the Spirit. But you, dear friends," he said, "by building yourselves up in your most holy faith, keep on showing and experiencing God's love. But showing mercy to those who doubt, saving others by snatching them from the fire, and for others, show mercy mixed with caution, avoiding even the clothing stained by corrupted flesh." Now, I'm not going to go into what specifically Jude was referring to there. It's not relevant for this conversation, but suffice it to say, he was describing a graduated distinction of compassion and care that required different criteria depending on who the beneficiary was, and instilling the need for discerning wisdom as we do it, acknowledging that not all circumstances requesting compassion should be met with the exact same response. The same, I believe, as do the various iterations and voices of our faith believe, is true about the issue of immigration. Both positions are supported in our faith, and both are represented in other faiths as well. So that's what our and the Jewish faith say about the topic. Very cursory, brief summary, but whether directly or indirectly. But what about other faiths? How do they intersect with this topic? Well, let's begin with Islam. The Quran speaks to the notion that migration can be a necessity for people in times of trouble, although admittedly, that commentary was referring to people within the nations of Islam needing to migrate out, which is a big distinction between how we address the topic here in this country. Nevertheless, it talks about it in times needing to be necessary, especially when one's life or beliefs are in danger. Some references in the Quran go further, requiring its followers to actually choose migration in those particular situations. Muhammad mentioned the stranger, as migrants are referred to in the Jewish scriptures, and he personally took several of them in when they arrived in the city. In one Quranic story, it indicates that it's a noble cause to use one's wealth to help immigrants and refugees. And I suppose one of the greatest supports of migration in the religion of Islam is the fact that Muhammad himself was considered an immigrant. A parallel or parroting, I suppose, of the Jewish understanding that God's requirement for Israel to show compassion to the outsider was because they themselves were once in the same position. They were migrants when exiting Egypt. But it's also true that many more practitioners of Islam are migrating into Western countries than vice versa. And you can make up your own mind as to how relevant or irrelevant that statistic is in the broader term or conversation of considering Islam's current day position on migration, but it is quite true. Let's move on to Buddhism. I actually personally identify as a Christian Buddhist, personally by practice. Buddhism highlights the need for compassion to be at the top of the hierarchy of our responses to life's challenges and encounters. But that position is nuanced. As the Buddha also taught many times, in that fabric of life, he said, is suffering. And that merely trying to curtail that without seeing the bigger picture and as a species into a better expression of ourselves is frankly missing the point of life itself, and may actually inhibit the growth and life lessons of those whose pain in their life is a formative element. Hinduism teaches something very similar, though it comes at it from a very, very different angle, one that is offensive to non-Hindus, especially Westerners. Two of the primary premises of that faith embrace two seemingly conflicted objectives or instructions. One, to acknowledge the existence of an inherent caste system in the human experience, and two, to be aware of or beware of the negative returns of our actions toward others through the inevitability of karma come chasing after us. And there, by nature, exists a tension between those two objectives, as well as a third one, that of both treating others well while not doing anything that interrupts the lessons they're supposed to be learning, by the very nature or through their particular individual caste assignment in life. In this life, anyway. It's paradoxical, and one that I think those that are raised in that faith are much more comfortable and familiar with it than most of us who only learn about it academically and not through personal experience. So other faiths struggle with this issue just like we do, and they have very different approaches and very different opinions as to how faith intersects with immigration. I'd like to close my initial thoughts today before opening the floor to you with my own faith and spiritual journey and how that informs me of this issue. Then we'll open it up for you to do the same. As progressives, we believe in opening our borders to those who are downtrodden by their own governments, who find the need to escape physical violence perpetrated by those that hold political power in their countries. And while we are not the world's policemen, we also cannot be isolationists as we were at the beginning days and years of our democracy. The world needs us to lead, to challenge, and to extend welcome. God's charge to Israel to take care of the stranger, the wayfarer, the vagabond is very, very clear. But our views on that issue are admittedly slanted when considering the potential for that welcome to exact the price of neglecting our own citizens. And that is a point I willingly cede. And I'll acknowledge something else, that we must come to terms with the fact that the concerns about borders being too wide are, to a certain extent, valid. Our welcome to those outside our country must be tempered with the reality of our own resources, our own actual ability to extend that welcome sufficiently and appropriately. But that, for me, raises another issue. Welcoming those outside our country is admittedly secondary to showing that welcome and acceptance to those that are already here. For some of them, for 400 years. Systemic racism is a real and powerful force in this country and is behind much of the civil unrest that we've experienced over the last several decades. God calls us to love our neighbor, not boot them out of the neighborhood or restrict their access to financial stability or forward-moving advantages. But I do recognize that the moment we highlight one group needing attention or reparation, we may risk tiptoeing into infringing on those of others who are no less in need of them or deserving of them. To this point, I think that our patience and listening ear must be extended to each other, because in the end, there are no easy answers to these dilemmas, and none that don't take a long time to properly implement. This is why there are so many conversations on race, because we as a culture simply don't know each other's plight, whether those within our nation or those trying to come in. And we don't know it intimately enough to justify holding strong opinions about either until we have heard the voices of those that we disagree with. But that's my opinion. And I know there are a lot of people in this church, even in this room, who have others, different ones, strong feelings about how faith directs their various reflections on the issue of immigration, specifically immigrants coming into the U.S. through our southern borders. So I want to carve out enough time for you to share those views. But with this caveat, we hinted at it last week, and then I also mentioned it in our midweek all-church email. What you share needs to be supported by some aspect of your understanding of faith and your spiritual experience, and not based merely on social or political opinions. That is my only request. And that, after all, is the whole point of this series. So with that proviso, for a few minutes anyway, the floor is yours. I am going to move this here. We had quite a few last week, and we spent a lot of time just running around the room with a microphone. So I'm going to ask that if you have something to share, you will come up and do so in this mic, if I can turn it. So please do.
Pastor Derek, what I'd like to hear in this discussion, I haven't heard
well enough yet, in my opinion, is the responsibility that we bear for creating the motive to try and immigrate to the United States. A 19th century Mexican dictator by the name of Porfirio Diaz was famous for saying, "Poor Mexico, so far from God, so close to the United States." And in this country, we have a lot of responsibility for the reasons why people flee their countries, not only in Latin America, but worldwide. I'm talking about imperialism, economic exploitation, undermining legitimately elected political governments, huge market for drug deals and the creation of cartels, the shipping of weapons into the wrong hands south of the border. This is a faith issue for me, because I think that we're going to be judged for what we have done, not just for what we've done in shutting the border, but what we've done in creating the motivation to get out of there, including climate change. which has now become a huge impact, and we continue to do very little to stop or to prevent that from creating suffering around the world in migration. So I think that we need to consider how we're going to answer to God for this someday. That's my faith issue.
Thank you. Very well said. Come on, don't be shy. I know a lot of you are itching to talk about this.
Something that I think about a lot when it comes to faith and any kind of integration with politics. I saw a sign outside of this church that says Christians Against Christian Nationalism, and that is what drew me to come in here, because for me, I sometimes feel like I go a little bit crazy because at the end of the day, our politics are a separation of church and state, and I feel like the quote-unquote wrong aspects of religion are the ones that are creeping in. And so I have to hold this really tenuous balance of how do I bring my faith in, but also respect that at the end of the day, we are separating the church and the state. And I want to challenge the other aspects of faith being brought in, but still uphold everything else. And so that's something that goes on in my brain.
If you want to share, please start making your way up so that you can just take over the mic.
One of my favorite quotes about politics in the United States is, Democrats are like the aunt who promises to take you to Disneyland time and again but never does. And Republicans are like the uncle who says, we don't have enough money to go to Disneyland, but you find out he went without you.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And how come there's always the theoretical question of, is it wrong for the starving person to steal food from the grocery store, when the question should be, why is it okay for the grocery store to hoard food when there are people who are starving? I think so many of these problems, and I love the point that you raise, which is, how are we treating our own people at home? And can we extend this welcome, goes down to resources. There shouldn't be billionaires. The United States military needs to chill out, and we need to redistribute our wealth and the means of production. And I think that would be a great start.
Oh boy, a politician who became a minister who is retired. Well, hello, all you immigrants. All of you immigrants, perhaps, welcome to this new world. My faith is one that is very simple. And if God is truly love, then anything that deviates from love is not from God. And I tend to take a view on immigration from that wonderful picture taken from one of our astronauts looking down upon the globe, where, surprise, surprise, there are no borders. That borders are arbitrary things that are derived, thought of by humans for various reasons. I tend to think that there's a lot of fear that permeates our immigration policy. There is a lot of greed and selfishness that people are concerned about when they think of inviting their neighbor to visit them in this land. And then there is racism, which just permeates a lot of the immigration policy that this country holds. If God is love, then anything that deviates from love, I believe, is wrong. So, I'm not running for office, but...
You wouldn't be talking if you were.
Yeah, I wouldn't be talking if I were. But that's my perspective. That's where all of my theology and my faith spring from, is a belief that God is love. And if I judge anything, I judge it from that premise.
Thank you, Kevin, very much. Who's next?
I just have a quick question. If I could have a raise of hands in the room, who has lived in a foreign country or as a migrant? Yeah. There is a Christian idea that God had to come to earth to live as a human, to have that experience in order to know. That's why I bring that up, and I highly recommend living in a foreign country.
Thanks, Grant.
So for me, I'll echo Kevin, God is love, and our charge is to love each other. And I just finished reading a book, and some of you also did, called The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. And it's about Jews, and they were called Negroes, this is in the 30s, living together in a poor part of Pottstown, Pennsylvania, where racism was alive and well. But because of particular individuals and individual acts of compassion and kindness on the part of certain Jews and certain among the black families, there was hope and changing of lives for some people who were cared for, who wouldn't otherwise have been cared for. It's a huge novel. It encompasses a lot of details. But I think that for me the message is we're not going to change the situation at the border today, or we haven't, even as we've elected people that we thought would work for a more compassionate policy at the border, that hasn't happened. But we can practice compassion and kindness right here in Portland or wherever you live, Lake Oswego, wherever you live. And that's going to count in someone's life. And that's good enough.
We'll have two more, and then we're going to go.
Come
on up.
Sorry. One of our fears seems to be of people who are different, look different, talk differently. And it's very interesting to me because I think it's an egocentric thing of Caucasians. I want my grandchildren to look like me. I want my world to look like me. Well, I'm the grandmother of children who look more black than they look like me, and they are beautiful. And it makes me realize we need to mix. We need to mix our races. We need to mix our ethnicities. We need to mix our cultures. And we will be so much richer for this. And that means being welcoming. And we may look more brown in the future, and that's great.
Come on, Susan.
I can only speak from my own personal experience about this, not from, well, do you think I'm short? Not from my head, but from my heart. I had the opportunity to live in Tucson for a number of years, and being from the Pacific Northwest, I had no personal information or involvement with immigration. But down there, as a retired nurse, I got to do the health screening and that when people came in, and my UCC church down there became a shelter basically overnight because people were being dropped off downtown at the bus station from ICE when they came across the border. No one wants to leave home. No one wants to drag your little kid for months traveling. But these people did that, and not all of them. I mean, there were some people that came from Russia through Mexico because it was the easy way to get to the country. So it's not a black and white issue, and it's not clear, and there's no easy answer to it. But I will say to you that was probably one of the most awakening and heartfelt experiences I've ever had, is dealing with these people one-on-one when they were dumped in our church parking lot with nothing and with crying, hungry babies. So I just would remind you, when you think about topics like this, to either seek some personal experience because it's enriching, but it also, that personal experience from one to one shows God's love, and there was never any doubt that God's love was rampant in Tucson with Catholic Community Services and all other churches.
Thank you, Susan. Bruce and Judy, come on up. We're going to hear, before we close our service, from some people who are doing work in this regard. I'm going to have to figure out which way it is. There we go. Okay.
Thanks for the invitation to comment, Derek. I don't know how much work we're doing, but we're trying to pay attention to what's going on, and I want to just give a little background about what the church has been doing for the last several years. It's important to point out, I think, that yesterday was the 12-year anniversary of DACA, an order that President Obama made to protect dreamers who are in the country. And it's been 12 years with nothing further really happening to help those dreamers. 9 years ago, a 10-person delegation from the church went to the border for a week and spent time working with the Samaritans, a humanitarian group that was co-founded by the local UCC church there. And we were involved in giving water, doing desert searches, giving food, medical aid, visiting the courts, sort of exposing ourselves to many of the things that Susan described. As a follow-up to that, 5 years ago, we unanimously adopted a declaration to be an immigrant welcoming congregation and joined a network of about a dozen UCC churches in Oregon and Southwest Washington who have similarly committed themselves to be immigrant welcoming. And that's the work that we're working on an ongoing basis. Next slide. Since our initial visit to the border in 2015, Judy and I have made 3 visits on our own, and the border is a very different place now than it was then. This snapshot was taken along the wall between Nogales and Sasabe. It's about a 20-mile stretch along the border. And it shows asylum seekers lining up so that they can be transported by the Border Patrol. They're waiting in about 100-degree weather and buses to come and pick them up. Last year when we were at the wall, It was the first time I had encountered migrants at the wall, and we saw three groups. One was 6 men who were holding back on the south side of the wall. One was 6 teenage boys who had actually crossed over by walking through the holes in the wall. And the third was 3 women with about 4 small children and migrants who were sitting on the north side of the wall, again waiting for Border Patrol. That's the first time I had encountered migrants in that way. That was also the first time I had seen President Obama's 30-foot tall wall. And that wall replaced an 18-foot tall wall that President Obama put in place. I'm sorry. The 30-foot wall was President Trump's. The 18-foot wall was President Obama's. And President Biden's order, which Derek mentioned of a couple of weeks ago, basically are forcing people to go back south into Mexico, even though they're legally in the United States. I won't go into those details, but that's sort of the background for our experience at the border. And I want Judy to talk about her experience and the next slide.
So he has everything on his iPad in nice little he has everything in his iPad in nice, neat sentences, and I'm scribbling, crossing out, saying no. Anyway, please don't cut me off. I want to finish up with something positive, and Casa de la Misericordia, which is a mouthful, and everybody down there says is headed by an amazing woman called Sister Leica. She's a former nun, but she still refers to herself as sister. Sister Leica is on the left of myself. She's very tiny. Okay? She runs the Casa. It is a refuge. It's a shelter. It has about 120 people at the max. It has $140,000 a year budget, which is not anywhere near enough money to support 120 people 24/7. Probably for 5 to 6 months. So they depend enormously on donations. I mean, from clothing to food to water to bedding to you name it. I've been there twice, and I have such a soft spot in my heart for this place. It is a walled compound. It's on a tiny narrow road on the top of a hill. The walls are to keep them safe, not to keep them in. They can be released to go to hospitals if necessary. They have schools for all ages up through high school. They have English language classes. They have art and crafts room for all ages. They have a nursery where it's like a preschool where children can go and mothers can have a break. They have a library. They have an on-site physician that sleeps overnight. They have, and this is really important, they have mental health specialists who are doing their practicum at the university in Nogales come and help with therapy. Huge need for therapy. These people are there with all sorts of issues. I'm going to end with one of my favorite memories of my visit there is when we were tiptoed into a darkened large, darkened, multi-purpose room. We were to be quiet, and there were 5-year-olds doing yoga with a leader, and very, very immersed in this lovely sort of environment. At any rate, I just wanted to let you know those are Bienvenidos quilts, and note what they're wearing, flip-flops. Eve's Circle is collecting flip-flops to send to them because that's their footwear of choice. Thank you.
Testament telling us what to do. In the New Testament, disciple Peter incites us to action. In 1 Peter 4:10, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. This morning, let us generously share our treasures and become stewards.
Says that love is blind. Still, we're often told, seek and ye shall find. So I'm going to seek a certain land I've had in mind. Looking everywhere, haven't found him yet. He's the big affair I cannot forget. Only man I ever think of with regret. I'd like to add his initials to my monogram. Tell me, where is the shepherd for this lost lamb? There's a somebody I'm longing to see. I hope that he turns out to be someone who will watch over me. I'm a little
We're going to have a little switch in order, and we're going to sing No Matter as our final hymn now.
You can be seated for just 1 second. It occurred to me, as well as to my Pastor Relations Committee, your former search committee, to briefly update you on some communications issues that we've been having in the office, particularly as they are relevant to or have impacted my perceived accessibility. About 2 months ago, my office computer ceased giving me consistent access to my church email account, disallowing me to respond to many of you who were emailing me in a timely fashion, until it just shut down altogether. At which point I asked the church leadership to contact me by use of my personal email address while I was away, until we could get the problem resolved. Well, it has been resolved, but only after I returned and only in the office computer and not with any of the other devices that I use when I'm working from home. At the same time, we discovered or were perhaps made aware of the fact that our archaic office phone system does not allow voicemail messages to be left in our individual extensions, even though, ironically, the outgoing message invites the caller to do so. So reaching me by phone outside of office hours was practically impossible, and without most of us knowing that. We are working diligently to address both of these issues, but please know that I am available by email or church phone to reach out to set an appointment, or to just leave a note or ask a question. And that perceived inaccessibility was purely unintentional and hopefully will be turned around in short order as we are trying to address this logistically. Now, please stand for our benediction. Relationship and recovery author Melody Beattie says this: "Gratitude unlocks the fullness of life, turning what we have into enough, denial into acceptance, confusion to clarity, a meal into a feast, a house into a home, and a stranger into a friend. As you go, be a friend to a stranger this week, and then come back next Sunday and tell us about it. Maybe even bring them with you. Go in peace."
Like the beat, beat, beat of the tom-tom when the jungle shadows fall. Like the tick, tick, tock of the stately clock as it stands against the wall. Like the drip, drip, drip of the raindrops when the summer shower is through. So a voice within me keeps repeating you, night and day. You are the one, only you beneath the moon and under the sun. Whether near to me or far, it's no matter, darling, where you are. I think of you night and day, day and night. Why is it so that this longing for you follows wherever I go? In the roaring traffic's boom, in the silence